Our solutions to quiz 1 for Math 95. So what we're given are two rational expressions here. Kind of look like fractions, but they're polynomials on the numerator and the denominator. And the nice thing about 7.3, the section this came from, is we'll always have the same denominator. 3x squared minus 4x minus 4, same thing over here. So when you're adding fractions with the common denominator, all you have to do is add up the numerators. We just have to figure out what is 2x plus 1 plus x plus 1. So this is probably a step that I don't need to show, but in the interest of showing as much as possible, I'll do it. This is the same as this. You add up the tops here and leave the denominator alone. Kind of same reason 1/7 plus 2/7 is 3/7. Right? You do the 1 plus the 2 on the top and you leave the 7 alone on the bottom. And now what we can do up top is combine like terms. So the step that I was thinking about not showing would be just jumping straight to here. But I decided to do it because these are solutions and I should show all my steps because that's what I'm probably supposed to do. So okay, if you get to here, that's pretty good. Maybe that's half credit getting to here. It shows that you kind of know what you're doing, how to add these up. But it turns out this can simplify. The way we will be able to see that it simplifies is if we factor out the numerator and the denominator. The numerator, there's nothing we can do. 3x plus 2, that's as far as we can go. But it turns out the bottom here will factor. So maybe I'll do that off to the side in a different color. Let's factor 3x squared minus 4x minus 4. And to do so, there's different ways to do it. The method that I'm teaching you guys is let's find two numbers that, and then we want them to multiply to whatever a times c is, whatever this number times this number is. Multiply to 3 times -4, multiply to -12, and add to whatever we got in the middle here, -4. The two numbers that will make that work are -6 and 2. The way you can come up with -6 and 2 is, well, the way I come up with it is I just focus on the multiplication. What multiplies to 12? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4? Okay, but it's negative. All right, so one of those two are negative. And then out of those lists, if one's negative and one's positive, which will add to -4, those will end up being these two right here. But that's just one step. We haven't factored this thing. That's just the first step in the process. We now say 3x squared minus, and then instead of writing minus 4x, we write what we just found, minus 6x plus 2x minus 4. In other words, to factor this thing, we start in our first step by writing it as 4 terms instead of 3 terms. And the reason you do that is it's a lot easier to factor 4 terms than it is 3 terms. We can use this method called factoring by grouping. And when you factor by grouping, you group these first 2 terms here, and you look for what's their greatest common factor. In this case, the greatest common factor is 3x. These guys both have a 3x in them. And when you factor out that 3x, you're left with x minus 2. Because if you pull out 3x from 3x squared, you're left with just x. If you pull out 3x from -6x, you're left with -2. And then your goal over here is to pull something out of this next group so that you're left with the same thing here, so that you're left with the x minus 2. So to be left with x minus 2, we'd have to pull out a positive 2, and then we'd be left with x minus 2 here. And so what we now have are 2 terms, and they both have an x minus 2 in them. So we can factor out that x minus 2, and what we're left with over here is 3x, and what we're left with over here is positive 2. So this factors to this. So what I can then do is hop back over here, maybe in yet another color, and say, okay, really this is 3x plus 2 divided by x minus 2 times 3x plus 2. And the nice thing there is this 3x plus 2 and this 3x plus 2 will cancel. So what we're left with as our final answer is 1 over x minus 2. So the answer to the first problem is 1 over x minus 2. Second problem, actually pretty similar. Maybe I'll do it a little bit faster because I'm going to be following the exact same steps. We're going to start out by, oh, we have the same denominator. Nice. So let's write that denominator once. I bet I'll need to factor that later, but we'll get there when we get there. And up in the numerator, we got x squared plus x minus 6 minus, be careful here, it's this entire thing, x plus 3. You need these parentheses. It's not minus x plus 3, it's minus x plus 3. Anyways, That's the same. This might be more steps than you need to see. But I've been told in course evaluations to show more steps. So I'm just doing what I'm told. That negative you can distribute through the parentheses before you combine like terms. Really what we have up on the top is x squared minus 9. The reason why is we have this x squared, this plus x and this minus x cancel out. Minus 6 minus 3 more is minus 9. And then on the bottom we have 2x squared plus 14x plus 24. So this answer is very similar to this answer. We've subtracted these two rational expressions, which is good. But I believe this thing's going to end up simplifying. And the way we'll see that it simplifies is we'll factor out the top and we'll factor out the bottom. On the top, good news, we have a difference of squares. X squared is a perfect square. 9 is a perfect square. And we have a difference of those two perfect squares, so it factors to x plus 3 times x minus 3. Then on the bottom, we just have to figure out what this factors to. We'll write it right here. And I bet one of these factors will cancel with one on the bottom. But let's figure that out. Maybe again, I'll do that off to the side. Let's factor 2x squared plus 14x plus 24. You see this and you're like, damn, he gave me another one of those with the leading coefficients not 1, right? Where we have to go through all these steps because those problems suck. No, I didn't actually. Before you start to factor, before you start that process of factoring, look for a greatest common factor. There's a 2 in all 3 of these guys. We can pull out that 2 and just be left with x squared plus 7x plus 12. The advantage of doing that is now you have a leading coefficient as 1, or of 1. So it factors a lot easier. We can jump straight down to the answer. You can look at this thing inside the parentheses and say, all right, I want two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to 7. And those two numbers are positive 3 and positive 4. So this factors to this. Note, this is a lot easier than all this mess we did up here. So what we figured out is down here I have a 2, I have an x plus 3, and I have an x plus 4. And then what's kind of nice is that, I have an x plus 3 on the top and an x plus 3 on the bottom. So I can cancel those out and I'm left with just this as my final answer. And just so nobody gets worried when they're turning their test, just so you know, that's the exact same as this. I don't care which form you give me. You could take this 2 and distribute it through and get 2x plus 8. But an answer looking like one of those two, and you got it perfect. And I suppose that is the end of this quiz.